Welcome to a new show called Faithbook. All of you are, or maybe had, Facebook. All of you know what are the profile, the photos, the event, and so on. But what I would like to discuss with you over the next 6 episodes, what if you have a faith book? Or for a minute, just imagine that Christ himself has a faith book. Whom would he tag? What will be his events? Who he will have to follow, and how many likes you think he will attract? In Faithbook, I would like to discuss with you these topics: profile photo, personal messages, events, profile in the making, transformation amid the stresses, and major enemies of changing. And with that, I would like to discuss today profile photo. If I ask you what's your profile photo on your Facebook, each one of you may or may not like to announce what it is. Some of you are putting their best picture while playing music or soccer or receiving a major award. Maybe some of you even have a picture jointly with a celebrity or a church figure. But some of you also may have a photo that they would like to keep it private. Christ in Mark 12 asked a question called, "Whose image is this? Whose inscription is this?" And basically, the story goes like that. They sent to him some of the Pharisees and Herodians to catch him in his words. When they had come, they said to him, "Teacher, we know that you are true and care about no one, for you do not regard the person of men, but teach the way of God in truth. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Shall we pay or shall we not pay?" But he, knowing their hypocrisy, said to them, "Why do you test me? Bring me a denarius, and that I may see." So they brought it, and he said to them, "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" And with that, I would like to discuss with you 7 points regarding tagged photos. The first, what does God's image mean? Second, how am I perceived by others? And do they see the image of God, the photo of God in me? 3, would God tag me as someone he is well-pleasing to him? 4, the masked photo. 5, self-image. How do I measure myself? 6, do I see Christ in others' photos? And finally, how do I transform into his image? Number 1, God's image. Christ is the image of God. He is the image of the invisible God and the firstborn over all creation. In Hebrews 1, St. Paul writes, "Who being the brightness of the glory and the express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power." Christ is the true image of the invisible God. But we are created in the image of God. It reads in Genesis 1, God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. But what does it mean we are created in God's image? We are immortal like God. For God created man to be immortal and made him to be an image of his own eternity. Wisdom of Solomon 2:23. There is no death for the sons and daughters of God. They are immortal because they are brought up in the image of the immortal God. 2, we are in his image as rational being. We read in St. Basil the Great, "Let us make the human being according to our image. That is, let us give him the superiority of reason." Quote by St. Basil. We are also brought up in God's image because we have begotten free will like his. In Genesis 2, we read, "Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day you eat, you shall surely die." You have the will to choose. You can choose evil or good. No one will force you either way because you are brought in his image. You also was brought in his image as far as authority is concerned. You as the human being, you have the highest authority over many, many creatures. As we read in Genesis 1, "Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the cattle, the earth, and every creeping that creeps on the earth." We are also brought in his image as far as goodness, generally speaking. Goodness in humankind is more than evil in humankind, regardless of the presence of the Holy Spirit. Men were created through the breath of God to be good until evil enters. In Genesis 1, we say, "God saw everything that he had made, and indeed, it was very good." What is the effect of sin on my profile, on my photo? Unfortunately, I became immortal, lost immortality. Sorry, I meant I became mortal being, became losing my immortality. For the wage of sin is death. And rather than being rational, I act irrational. When evil enters into my life, I lose the tagging of God's photo in me, and I become irrational. We read in Romans 1, "Although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became fertile in their thoughts." Number 3, rather than having a free will, sin, when entered into my profile, now I use the free will against God. With my own will, I refuse and reject God. In Genesis 4, we read, "If you do well, you will not be accepted. And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desires is for you, but you should rule over it. Now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose against Abel his brother and killed him." Number 4, when sin entered into my profile, I lost my authority over myself. I don't have a control over my senses. Most assuredly, I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave of sin. John 8. And instead of goodness, now I do evil. So in summary, the profile of God in me was distorted when sin affected His photo in me. My immortality became death. The rationale, I became irrational. The free will, by my own will, I became unloving to Him. The dominion and authority, I became a slave. And the goodness, unfortunately, changed into evil. The second point is what other people see in my photo. Do they see two-faced person? At church from Friday to Monday, a church person, and Monday through Thursday, a different face, different photo? Do they see someone who has nothing to do with God, even refuting His presence? How do people see my photo? How do I walk? How do I dress? How do I behave? How do even I pose before pictures? How other people see my photo? Do you make an impression, a good one, that others upon which they will tag you, they would like to resemble you, they would like to simulate you? Number 3, would God tag me as someone well-pleasing to Him? Again, rhetorically, if God has a faith book, would He tag me? Would He like me because I have a photo resembling His? Number 1, would He recognize me in the photo? Would He say, who is that image and to whom this picture belonged to? This is not the guy I created. He looked different. She looked strange, foreign. I lost my image in her. He doesn't carry my photo in him. Whose image is this? Imagine if God has this faith book, would He actually know that this image is yours, is His, or you have lost it? Would He add my photo to His faith book? Would He say, I would like this gal or this girl or this boy to be part of my faith book? I want to pick on 2 people who were tagged. One is Zacchaeus, a reject tax collector, short stature, not liked by many. Everyone's Facebook have rejected his friendship. But Christ's faith book tagged him. Saw his photo on a tree, wanting and loving to see Christ. And He tagged him. He said, I want you to be my friend. I want to spend today with you. And Zacchaeus was tagged because he really pleased God. The woman with the issue of blood, a woman who went to so many doctors, 12 years had passed and she's still bleeding. Everyone in the crowd doesn't want her next to him because bleeding in that age meant defilement to anyone she touches. No one wants to touch her. No one wants to tag her. But Christ, when she took His picture, wanted to tag her photo, wants to add her to His faith book. He said, one person have touched me. And when everybody complains saying, what are you talking about, God? Everybody is squeezing you. And you say somebody touched you? He said, no. Power have came out of me. She have snatched my photo and she added me to her Facebook. So am I will add her to my Facebook. Number 4, the masked photo. Question, is the image of God consistent in my life? If you read this word from 1 Kings 18, how long will you falter between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. But the people answered him not a word. Which photo you are showing and which one you are masking? Many of us who have Facebook, they have one account that be shared with everybody, including parents, and another one that's more private. They don't want people to see because it has a different face. It's masked. Do you have a masked photo? Is the image of God consistent in your life? 5, self-image. How do I measure myself? How do you compare yourself, and whom do you compare yourself against? That's a question. There are many of us who have Facebook, especially girls, put their picture and they want to appear like celebrities, like people who wear fashionable clothes or act in a picture in a way that make them aligned with others. Do you compare yourself with them? Whom do you compare yourself with? In 2 Corinthians, St. Paul wrote, "For we dare not class ourselves or compare ourselves with those who command themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise." Would you compare yourself with Saint Damiana if she has a Facebook? Would you compare yourself with Saint George, should he have one? Or you have different names you are comparing yourself against? Another question. What I'm being compared with? In Revelation 11, there is a verse says, "I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel stood saying, 'Rise and measure the temple of God, the altar, and those who worship there.'" God is measuring us. Everyone coming to the altar, God is measuring them. Are you growing? Are you moving up? Or you have a spiritual retardation of growth? In Ephesians 4, St. Paul wrote, "Till we come to the unity of faith and the knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ." Are we comparing ourselves to the verse that says we need to be perfect as your Father is perfect? The fullness of Christ. Number 6, do I see Christ in others' photos? In James, we read, "No one has seen God at any time. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love has been perfected in us." God is not seen, but do you see Christ in the people around you? The needy, the poor, even the sinners, the people who need help. They need to be covered up, not exposed. In Ephesians 4, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another just as God in Christ forgave you." Do you see Christ in those who need tenderness, compassion? Could you be be helpful to those so you can see Christ in their faces. The next point, how to transform into His image. Because in Ephesians 5, St. Paul wrote, "Therefore be imitators of God as dear children, and walk in love as Christ has loved us and given Himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma." Are you an imitator of God? Are you being transformed into this image? As St. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians, that we are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory as by the Spirit of God. Every day you're looking towards that image, the image of God, and you want to move on to resemble His image. So, in summary, faith book tagged photos can be in many points. The first, how does God's image mean to me in rationality, in holiness? How am I perceived by others? Do others see the image of God in me, or do they see other images? Would God tag you should He have a faith book and like you because you please Him? For the masked image, which side you showing and how many photos you have? Self-image, how do you measure yourself and to whom you are comparing yourself with? 6, do you see Christ in others' photos? And finally, transform into His image. This was Faith Book. Until we meet again, God bless.